Greetings and welcome to the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. I'm Phyllis Hollis, your host. As an extension of my Instagram page, Cerebral Women, this podcast offers insights into the visual art world. I interview artists, mainly artists of color and female artists, who will freely articulate what inspires their creativity. In addition, you'll hear interesting perspectives from dedicated art professionals who work with artists and the art institutions that feature them. I'm confident that collectively, these individuals will indeed stimulate your mind as they do our eyes. Please know these interviews are conducted in my Manhattan apartment, so please forgive the background sounds of city life. Welcome to the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. In this episode of the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast, I feature painter Ronald Jackson. He studied architecture at Saddleback College in California before joining the U.S. Army. He served more than 21 years and retired in 2014. During his military career, he began a pursuit of becoming a professional artist. With no access to art school, Ronald engaged himself on a journey of self-disciplines and personal discovery to realize his goal as an artist. The military afforded him the experience of living in places such as South Korea, Belgium, Italy, Germany, Iraq, and Kuwait. He believes that his childhood upbringing and the adult experience of being immersed into other societies has given him an appreciation and broad perspective on life amidst the complex challenges that we all face. In September 2021, Ron participated in a group show at UTA Artist Space in Los Angeles titled Literary Muse that was inspired by Black literary novelists, poets, and scholars. He was also in a group show at UTA in July of 2020. Another show was titled State of the Art 2020 at the Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art in Arkansas. In 2018, Ronald had a solo exhibition at Gallery Meredith titled Profiles of Color 3, Fabric, Face, and Form. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast, and enjoy Ronald Jackson. Ronald, thank you very much for joining me on my Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So, tell us, when did you realize your artistic curiosity and passion?
I guess I would say that artistic passion just slowly developed over time. I was aware of people making me aware that I had a talent throughout my childhood. And as I grew older, art was basically a way to entertain myself. And once I took the arts a little more serious, I wouldn't say that I was so passionate about it, but that passion started to grow as I delved more into trying to figure out what it meant to be an artist.
Were there any particular artists that influenced you early on?
Early on, I would say probably not, because I didn't grow up in a place where art was taken seriously, and I really didn't go to museums or didn't really see any art outside of what was common in the area where I grew up, which was quilts. Quilting was the closest thing to me potentially being influenced by art or by observing art. And I think looking back at that, I think that's why patterns appeal to me, the patterns that are found in quilts. And likely every home in Arkansas where I grew up would have quilts in some place in the home. You know, there were people in every family that quilted. And that was the case with my oldest sister. But as far as in the earlier time of my childhood or growing up as a kid, I didn't really see or have any direct influence of a working artist.
As it pertains to quilts, while you were observing the patterns, did you also observe if there was one, the message that the quilt was conveying?
Well, that's something that I learned. I learned, as I grew older, the connection with quilt patterns and how different quilters would incorporate those patterns. And I'm not sure, most of the quilters that I came across were trying to, present a message. It was mostly an aesthetic that they incorporated patterns, making quilts. And there are a lot of amazing quilts that I came across, but I think it was something that is a subconscious influence. I didn't consciously recognize or value the quilters or the quilts that were around me, which was mostly older people, and that's not something that really excited me back then. But as I look back, it was obviously a part of my, what would I say, influence. Yeah.
And what would you say motivates you to create work?
My motivation for creating art is, first of all, art has always entertained me. It's something that I would do to occupy my mind. And becoming an artist, one of the things that motivates me with my art is the idea of illustrating a story. Maybe the wrong word. I wouldn't take such an illustrative approach, but to bring a visual representation of ideas or my imagination, taking those thoughts and bringing it into some visual context. That's something that has always interested me.
How do you feel as you approach a blank canvas?
Well, approaching a blank canvas for me is probably, unlike most, you hear a lot of artists talk about the challenge with the blank canvas. For me, the blank canvas is probably the most exciting part of my process, because I usually start in my head with ideas, and I am anxious to get to those ideas, and they're usually waiting for me to complete a project that I'm working on. And when I finish those projects and I have the opportunity to start on something new, that's the most exciting point for me. I am more free to start sketching and working on that white canvas. So that's my favorite part of the process.
And do you listen to music?
Yeah,
while you're painting?
Yeah, music is a big part for me in the studio, and I can go from classical music, and it depends on what stage of the painting I'm in. If I'm at a place where I'm concentrating more, I would want classical music, music that I'm not listening to. It's just a environmental atmosphere that I like in my studio. And for me, music is all about creating a vibe, an energy, whether it is upbeat house music. I've been listening to a lot of African house music lately. And I appreciate and value that energy to get me started in the studio and get going. So yeah, music influenced my energy to start working.
When do the titles of your paintings enter the creative process?
The titles usually come after the paintings are complete. And oftentimes when I'm working on several pieces, I think I work kind of slow on my works because there are different stages, and I'm working on several works at a time. And a lot of times when I am preparing works for a show or exhibit, my gallerist or is asking for a work in progress photos, and I'm trying to bring them there. And before I'm finished, okay, do you have titles? And for me to think about the titles, it's something that I have to be in a completely different headspace than when I'm creating the work. So usually it's after I have concluded the painting, I'm satisfied with it. I have the idea of what the painting is about and the idea that I want to portray with the painting or the work, but it's that finding the phrase or the words to convey that's something I have to sit back and ponder on. And that is usually always after the painting is completed.
How do you keep learning?
Wow.
Trick question. No.
Well, learning is, man, for me, learning requires a lot of opportunities for me to experiment. And that is not always easy when I call it when I'm in a production mode. Production mode for me is when there are obligations or commitments or for me to meet with exhibitions or whatever, and I'm just focused on creating a series or collections of works to provide for something. But there's the times that I have to enter into a creative space where it's okay for me to make a lousy painting or for me to do something that is not so aesthetically appealing. And in those times, it allows me to figure out something, learn something, or discover a process or something. And that lends me the opportunity to grow in regards to my process of painting. But in other areas of just growing as a artist or a person, I think it's important to just be aware of current issues, events, and I like to compare them or look at them in reference to the past or history. So it's important to be aware of historical events and a lot of things, different things just replay in our society. It may not be in our generation, but that's something I try to stay aware of.
Do you have memories that are reflected in your work?
Yeah, memories I think are big with the works that I create, but not necessarily memories that I consciously have when I'm creating works. A lot of the works I am seeking to guide viewers to look at situations or events in the past and speculate on those possible scenarios of experiences that people had in the past. And for me, the memories that may influence some of the works that I create is memories of me overhearing stories that are being told. And I get bits and pieces of those stories. So it's kind of a fragmented experience of recalling memories and putting things together. And as I hear more and more stories, putting those fragments together kind of presents a reality, for me or for things that I wasn't necessarily focused on, but it paints a picture of some of the realities that were experienced when I was a child, I would say.
Do you consider your work portraiture?
I have resisted that notion. and I've given a presentation at a museum that I had some work in. And throughout the presentation, I emphatically stated that I'm not a portrait painter. And I was stating that out of from a place of humor, because the works that were being exhibited would most likely be identified as portraits. For my understanding of portraiture, the interaction is usually, do I know who this person is? That's and once that is identified, this is this person, the engagement ends. And then you say, that's a nice representation of that person. If you can't figure out who the person is, move to the question of, should I know who this person is? So it's always about identity. But for me, it's more about stories and getting the viewer to enter into a interactive engagement with the imagery. And the people that I present, you're not going to know who they are. They're not of a specific person. So that is out. So with me incorporating mask on my portraits, if you would say, of the person, it creates an element of mystery, and so that entices the viewer to want to find out, okay, what is this about? There's a story to be uncovered. So if you can't get a clue by the title or figure things out, you're going to turn your back to the painting eventually and go and try to seek me out or someone out to kind of fill you in on a story. So that is more of what the engagement that I seek to happen. It's not about identifying who a person is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked you that question. I liked your answer. How would you define Black art?
That's a challenging question. How would I define Black art? I consider myself a Black artist. I guess the art that I make would be considered Black art if I depict Black people in my art. That's being a figurative artist, artists that create representational work. I had a conversation with another artist, and we were talking about how our art, having Black figures in it, it places you in that category of Black art. People say, I love Black art or whatever, but for me, my art is referencing, like you were asking, memories and people from my memory or my past. But I could very well paint images of non-Black people and have the absence of a Black figure in my painting. I have painted some paintings of white people, and I'm curious to discover or see if my paintings would then still be considered Black art if I did that. And that's something that I've been kind of thinking about, maybe experimenting with the idea of creating works that didn't depict a black face or a Black person, and how would that be perceived differently from the works that I've been creating. So Black art, that is something I don't know how to answer. That's something that's been thrown out there, and yeah, that's the best that I can do with that question.
Well, I can't wait to see your experiment. What are you excited about now?
Well, one of the things that I have tried to start this year, but look like it's gonna be pushed back a little bit. I'm excited about collaborating with other creatives and combining our creativity and our efforts to create something a little bigger than what I've been doing. You know, I have some ideas that I've been, you know, working out or working on or pondering over, that I realize that they are bigger than what I would be able to do alone. So for me, just building relationships with other creatives and eventually finding an opportunity for me to collaborate with others to create something that's dynamic. That's something that I plan on doing and hopefully sooner than later.
I've enjoyed our conversation, Ronald. And now I'm going to ask you the very last question, which is, what do you feel your role is as an artist?
My role as an artist, wow. I am a self-taught artist, and I spent a lot of time just trying to study and figure out what it meant to be an artist. And that is something that I haven't secured a good answer. But what I feel my role as an artist is to bring visual or imagery to spark or initiate conversation. I was speaking with someone just when I was in LA about my work, and I expressed that it would be disappointing if the engagement with my work ended at observing the aesthetics of the imagery. But I would want for my work to, and I've made this reference earlier, for the viewer to be able to turn their back to my work after viewing it, engaging it, turn their back to my work. They're no longer seeing it, but they are engaging themselves and potentially others with the ideas or thoughts that were generated through the work. So my role would be to create conversation. Yeah, create conversation and thoughts, interest about ideas and concepts.
Well, I enjoy your work very much, and I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me today.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for listening to Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. For additional content, please visit cerebralwomen.com and be sure to follow Cerebral Women on Instagram.